I work for a Fortune 15 healthcare company, primarily distribution. So we're not super client facing from like a hospital perspective. About 40,000 endpoints, 40,000 Windows workstation clients. I'm on the client engineering side, so we don't manage a server team at all or server OS at all. About 400 locations, so it's 400 physical facilities. And then post-COVID, a lot of people were working from home. So prior to COVID, when we first purchased Adaptiva, it was mostly people in like our corporate office, but since then we moved a lot of people to work from home. So Adaptiva was brought in during the transition over to Config Manager, and it was really a financial play. I'll be honest. It was the team looked at what it would cost to set up distribution points at all the locations, or the locations even we do imaging at, and the cost per distribution point that we'd have to pay to our server team and internal cost times the amount of locations was just very, very high. So realistically speaking, the cost of a distribution point at the sites we needed them would have precluded us from doing Config Manager effectively. I'd say the biggest difference was dedication to the cause, but the other competitors in the space seemed disinterested in the product stack. Those other competitors had other products in the pipeline, other focuses of the company, so to speak, but Adaptiva seemed very focused on content delivery. The other competitors had requirements on the infrastructure side that would require additional infrastructure just to support the product being rolled out initially. While Adaptiva truly had very, very limited amount of requirements on the scale of our infrastructure side. It was primarily related to just like what the client needed to reference instead of actual distribution points that actually had to pull content from. If we took straight distribution points, it would have been millions of dollars. From like 400 sites times the cost of a distribution point compared to what Adaptiva costs, it would have been effectively millions of dollars. I worked at another large insurance company that had one of the competitor products that we still had to have distribution points in the environment. So with those distribution points, that you had to have a team dedicated to maintaining them, rolling them out, deploying them from a net new perspective, let alone the financial cost. So we do not have an infrastructure team per se. Like we don't have a team building distribution points, managing them. It's just, we're in the cloud, but it's rolling up a distribution point very quickly, just as an Adaptiva reference point. It would have been like over 400 distribution points. And that would have been the initial rollout. And then we go through mergers and acquisitions. We go through, divestitures and, shutting down locations as well, just through natural growth. And each of those distribution points would have had to be handled. So it would have had to be handled by our team to decommission them, and then the server team or the rollout team effectively to either deploy them or, turn them off, cleanly, versus Adaptiva where it just kind of happens. Yeah, it's a massive amount of time savings. There's no infrastructure things to worry about on the back end. There's no distribution point management. There's no troubleshooting content delivery or troubleshooting, content distribution to the distribution points. That just doesn't exist. Since everything is in the cloud and being referenced there, everything is just fast because it just happens, and then Adaptiva takes it from there. It's a very tight-knit company. Like you will get to know the engineers and the people assigned to your account very quickly. Like you put a case in or open a case for an issue, like it's the same people each time. And we've been a customer for many years now, and it's the same people. No one has left, I guess would be a good thing to say, is you have people who you meet, on day one who are still there on, day, 1,000. And then the new people coming in are always experienced config manager people who have experience with the product stack and they know the Adaptiva product. You will never get a tech who's like, I don't know what this product's doing. It's very nice from opening a case perspective compared to like Microsoft, for example. Working with Adaptiva is simple because you can just open a case up, you reach out directly to them. They know your environment by virtue of them working with you in the past. And it's very simple to work with. It's another tool in the tool chest to fix issues on the client endpoint, whether it's punching a registry value, checking the health of config manager, or doing specific things that you need it to do quickly at scale. The config manager either can't because of its own limitations, or it's just maybe more challenging a config manager, or is relying on a config manager client that's healthy. And Adaptiva, for better or worse, the client is very stable, and if you need to do something on a client, the Adaptiva client will by far be more reliable to do set action than config manager. And that's kind of what we saw out of the product. There's already some pre-canned health checks and things like that, but the scripting language you can wrap around it, PowerShell, their own tool set builder is very good. So we can deliver content with it. We can set registry values. We can do things during autopilot provisioning before the client gets installed. You can install Adaptiva first, set some baselines, do things with that client that are quicker than config manager. So the OneSite Health is much faster than getting policy from config manager, delivering policy, and then doing specific health checks to, if this product is not installed on the device, deliver the content with Adaptiva, install the agent, and then you're good to go. With conditional access and things like that, where you need to meet certain criteria, you still have to have something to deliver that fix, and Adaptiva can fill that gap. It's hard to quantify because it is shockingly fast, and it's very, very. You guys used your content delivery mechanism that was already global and worked very well. Running smaller health checks, it is insanely fast to deliver that, either the content for the remediation or the scripting language that just runs the action on the device. Yeah, it's another tool, a tool chest from a perspective of things we want to do on the endpoint. But like from a benefit perspective, we can help ensure that the device is in the state that we have deemed what we in security want on that device with Endpoint Health, using our own logic and scripting language around it. So a lot of times we will get asked from teams about ad hoc information. Microsoft has a solution for that as well in CM Pivot, and you can do basically the same thing with Adaptiva at scale, quicker with client health. You can run a health check and say, is this value here? Is this return the value of a PowerShell script, and just get very quick reaction, very quick reports generated from that information. Oh yes, very much so. Very much. It just in times of in terms of time save and just getting content to the workstation clients is huge. If we didn't do this, we didn't have the automation surrounding this product, we would just miss things, right? You only have X amount of hours in a day. You only have so many priorities you can set. You need something to do that work for you, or you're going to miss it, right? Like it's a binary choice. You're either going to be able to hire the staff to do it and just kind of churn through it, which is possible, but hugely burdensome, or you have some automation and a product that can do it for you. And being able to control the rollouts and all of that is part of the OneSite patch product that you can still do. So any change control processes or rollout and testing, the product handles, but it's just you need to have something like this in your environment. You don't need to have a distribution point serving content over bits over your VPN tunnel. And with the split tunneling and the ability to do true peer-to-peer over the internet, it really does offload that workload and that bandwidth back to your users, which is really fantastic from like a deployment perspective. You're already trusting Adaptiva to deliver content to your remote sites. Now you can utilize it for all the work from home people. And the CDN product really added a whole nother layer to the Adaptiva stack. Now the remote sites can download things much, much quicker than really they ever could before. When we deploy something to a site, we now have visibility to what exactly is occurring. We can see, what clients downloading it at what speed. So, when the networking team asks, we're seeing bandwidth utilization at the site, is this your products? We can legitimately say no, and then take a screenshot or send a, screen capture of what the Adaptiva content traffic to that site is. And before, that just didn't exist. Like, from, normal Microsoft traffic for bits or, branch cache or delivery optimization traffic, you can't instantly see a graph of that. You can run PowerShell, you can do, graph API calls to see delivery optimization traffic, but like a real-time active visibility of that kind of traffic just doesn't exist in other products. So if we can, take one engineer off of doing patch deployment and put him on something more interesting and better, that's huge. So I guess one thing that we really like are the content pushes, where, in a config manager environment, if you are pre-staging something, you can use config manager to deploy that content out to devices, but it's a little bit more complex, especially for like task sequences and such, where you'd have to pre-stage a task sequence. With Adaptiva, they let you specifically push content to groups of devices with the Adaptiva engine. So it's, all the content delivery mechanisms that you already know and use and trust, they have their own method to specifically push that content to devices. So when the job needs to run, it's already there. And the granularity and the targeting mechanisms that Adaptiva can use are much more fully featured than what the config manager environment can do. And then you're also not adding that load on the config manager to deliver policy and deployments that way.